This is louder than I thought. Thanks for everyone. Clearly one side of the room is less populated than the other one. Please feel free to make it more symmetric if you like. Welcome to the Archives at NCBS event today for the Research Fellowship Program. I'm Venkat, I'm part of the team here at the Archives, and it's really nice to see a nice mix of people in this room here for Mansi's talk. Mansi is of course no stranger to many of us in this room, but in the interest of completeness, I shall still introduce her. But before doing that, just giving a sense, the Research Fellowship Program is one of the many activities of the Archives at NCBS. It's a program to try and get people to engage with the archival collections, which are broadly from the history of science in contemporary India. I'm assuming everyone in this room has been spammed at least a few times from archives mails. If you haven't, please tell us how that happened. We'll fix that. And but yeah, the archive is open to the public. It has over 350,000 digital objects from across 50 plus collections and over 200 interviews, if I'm not mistaken. So please do look up the archives website, and there are many archivists in this room who can help you navigate the space. As part of this program, the Archives Research Fellowship Program and the Scholar in Residence Program is a way for researchers and scholars at different points in their career to engage critically with this archival material and derive interpretations, meaning, reflections from this material. And we're so happy to have Mansi having done a variety of actually very different things, both in terms of engaging with the material, but also bringing in different kinds of material from communities that she will be reflecting on today. So Mansi is a researcher currently, as I said, working on archiving the Puroik oral literature from Northeast India. She holds a master's degree in wildlife biology and conservation from NCBS, and her principal research interests lie in ethnobotany and people-plant relationships. In this particular talk, she's going to be sharing her experience as a researcher and archivist during her time here at the Archives at NCBS. She's also an artist, and you'll see a little bit of that, and she likes to convey her work and personal stories through her art. And her talk is titled, What Can Archiving Teach You About the Archive? And one last sort of, archive self-promotion note, which I forgot to share earlier, which is that if work like this interests you, and if trying to engage with the archival collections interests you, please go and check out the Research Fellowship website. Call will be re-announced tomorrow, but it is open for researchers to apply, and the next deadline is on July 31st. But coming back for the talk, please join me in welcoming Mansi for today's talk. Thank you.
Thank you, Venkat, for the introduction and also for the opportunity to do this. Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining me today, and to everybody online as well. For the past 5 months, I have been a researcher turned archivist at the Archives at NCBS, and I'm going to be sharing with you my learnings from this period, starting from the very beginning of an idea of an oral archive to how it changed my understanding of the archive. I joined the Archives as a fresh graduate of the master's program, also here on campus, in wildlife biology and conservation. And it was during the master's that I had this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to go to Arunachal Pradesh, spend time with the Puroik people, learn their language, learn about their plants, and document their oral literature. I'm ready to dive right in, but I will take you through 4 main parts of my talk. I'll start with the project origins, how the data originated, the intention and process behind documenting it, the initial thoughts about archiving it. Then, we'll see what archiving meant in this case. I'll share some of the dilemmas we faced and discuss ethics at the center of archiving and how they informed this work. I will be connecting to 3 different spaces: indigenous data governance, principles of archival theory, and feminist ethics of care. Then I'll take you through the process of cataloging the records, what daily work as an archivist was. And finally, I'll wrap up with sharing some of my learnings and offering some questions. I'll begin in 2023 when I was a master's student and had a keen interest in people-plant relationships. At that time, one of my supervisors, Chintan Sheth, also present here in the audience, who has been working in Arunachal Pradesh for many years now, encouraged my interest and introduced me to the relationship shared between the Puroik people and a plant that they cultivate as their staple food. It was my absolute fortune to connect with his Puroik friends and, with their support and guidance, conduct a project where we documented plants language, and the oral literature of the tribe. The Puroik people are an indigenous group living in many parts of Arunachal. I had the chance to go to East Kameng, where Eastern Puroik dialect is spoken, one among many dialects of the Puroik language. Puroik is a Tibeto-Burman language. It has very few speakers in many parts of Western Arunachal and in some parts of Tibet. It is considered one of the oldest languages in Arunachal Pradesh. The Puroik tribe has about 10,000 people, according to the last census in 2011, and it is already a parent generation language. UNESCO's Atlas of the World's Languages in Danger categorizes it as definitely endangered, which means the parent generation still speaks the language, but when they talk to their children, the children may respond in a different language, more dominant in the region. They are forgetting their own language, and this is a concern that has been expressed by elders in the community. The Puroik hold deep place-based knowledge where the rivers, mountains, and skies influence their cosmology and are prominent in their oral literature. Living in Puroik homelands was both transformational and heartwarming. With beautiful mountains and valleys and amazing people.
Và này आएगा पानी में डायरेक्ट या बहुत सुंदर है तो
Delicious food, you'll see their staple food, palm seafood.
ठीक है अब हम लोग
पहले स्टार्ट करें हम
हम लोग खाना खा रहे हैं ना ठीक है स्टार्ट करेगा
ओके
हाँ
1 2 3
praise the Lord
praise the Lord बहुत अच्छा है
अच्छा है ना
ये
यहाँ जाने तो
बहुत है ना डेंजर है
वाह क्या है ये
बहुत जैसे
I was showered with friendship and learning.
我都外旁边外面用个过年路，这个便利大路，我背过路的风了，这个我打搞不了，一个一零过马路那个他，东，我家和那一等大方面的，我那把咋回来的，那他我都等3万，3万就不那咋接。sama po sa jero na lata jibo ta au ko to ye chang tang yi ga jibo la au ko la pa ma cha ra tang jilo pu la to re yu ta rang pa ne jira ga ma cha ra tang ka so la ma ta ne lata je gre song me ro Benchero, atamachido bro. Dre, apo mo itang.
In this video, Elder Kyap Machidu is telling about the origin of the people in present-day Byale, Surung Kaswang, and Machidu villages. There were 3 sons of Kyu, an ancestor of the Puroik, in East Kameng. 3 sons named Yalo, Chado, and Dungno. In an unfortunate turn of events, Yalo had died, and carrying this grief, Dungno had moved to Tongteng Sawa. There, multiple generations of Kyu followed, and there were 3 sons born to ancestor Yu, Sungme, Byangche, and Muchidu. And these were the ancestors of people in the 3 villages Byale, Surung Kaswang, and Muchidu. When I went there, my curiosity was around a plant and how it becomes important to a culture. And so I would ask people about a palm tree they cultivate as their staple food. For the botanically inclined, it's Arenga micrantha. It is a palm that stores starch in its trunk over the period of about 1 human generation, after which it is harvested but keeps generating vegetative shoots in a cluster to live after it. These kinds of palms are called sago palms, and this one is endemic to the eastern Himalaya. Interestingly, it's not just a staple food. It's so integrated in daily life manifests itself in the material culture, language, and is a prominent figure in the oral history of the tribe. The thing you need to know about Arunachal is that its history is oral. There are very few written records, and most languages don't have scripts. That said, it is a hub of linguistic diversity with over 90 languages recorded in the region. In Arunachal, among the different tribes, and all over the world in many indigenous cultures, oral histories are spoken records of the history. They are passed on over generations. But as is happening with oral traditions all over the world, languages are fast disappearing, and the knowledge stored in them is also fast disappearing. The loss of a language is not just the loss of its grammar or vocabulary. It's the loss of entire ways of understanding the world. It's the loss of entire cultures. During the master's research, we had the privilege of recording with some of the last people who remembered the oral history of the Puroik tribe and who expressed the concern that it was disappearing. Knowing this as a researcher, what would you do? In the beginning of the project, I, along with my research advisors, Chintan Sheth and Anindya Sinha, thought of creating a repository of the Puroik oral literature, reinforced by the elders' concern of the disappearing language and knowledge. Now, after the project, we have many recordings spanning 3 themes: plant knowledge, especially an ethnobotanical account of the palm; 2, life histories of some elders, what they had seen in the course of their lives; and 3, oral history of the Puroik tribe, memory of historical events leading to the present day. We found through the interviews and oral history narrations that the association between the palm and the Puroik people is as old as memory itself. It was given to the Puroik people by the creator when different groups of people were being created and sent to their different paths. They brought the palm with them. They also brought the tools and knowledge of making sago from it, and vegetatively grew the palm along the paths that they traveled. The palm at present is not just a staple food. It's a cultural keystone through its prominence in every part of daily life and its manifestation in multiple forms, its role in Puroik imagination of the world. The Puroik people cultivate many varieties of this palm. We documented 16 varieties in 5 villages of East Kamen, each of them associated with a set of identifying characters and sago quality. It is very important for food security in the region. Elders recount it as the only reliable source of food through thousands of years, even helping other tribes survive in times of famine. Hence, it is the memory of these varieties and the oral history that determines the continued reliance of the Puroik people on the palm in the future. The recordings we made together include these aspects of the association between the people and the palm, and also an account of their lives in the past, their knowledge and history. To make a repository of this oral literature, the archives at NCBS was a natural choice for us. It was an archive on campus that I had interacted with several times. It was at the same place as the master's research and where it had originated and was housed. And we had also seen the work of the archives at NCBS and appreciated it. When we approached the archives, they also felt the idea was important and needed attention. But they had some reservations. Like, first of all, why should an archive of the oral literature of a tribe in Arunachal Pradesh be housed all the way in Bangalore? And second, whether people knew and consented for this archive. So before starting the project, in one of the first discussions, Deepika and Anjali at the archives explained to me how a generic consent and enthusiasm for creating or storing the knowledge in a repository was not enough to initiate the archive. The people needed to know exactly where the archives is, what it is, which information are we proposing to archive, and who will have access to it. Only after this information, they may give their consent, and with the knowledge that they can deny or revoke it at any time as they deem fit. This information is perfectly possible to communicate on a phone in cities like ours, but quite unlikely in remote villages in Arunachal, where network is already scanty, and because of a difference in language, the information could be easily misrepresented or unregistered on phone. And so this meant that I had to go back and make sure that I conveyed this information to all our consultants in person. And so the project began with a month of field work. I went to all the places as last year and more, so that we could consult a wider group of knowledgeable people who could advise on this project. Going back there was very significant. It meant a lot to me and to our Puroik friends It showed them my commitment to the work, having returned after a year because they know it's not easy to get there. It was like tying a loose end. I met with elders from far and wide to share with them an intention to archive at the archives at NCBS. Now the word archive was new for them, as it was for me when I first came to NCBS. But that put me in a better position to explain to them in Arunachali Hindi. And to aid my explanation further, I made a video in which I summarized everything we had done and found in the previous year and showed the people where and how far my place of study in Bangalore was. What did the archives look like? What might their recordings appear like if they were uploaded on the net? And here is a clipped and sped up version of that video.
बड़ा बूढ़ा लोगों की आवाज़ में पूरा पुरोई कहानी को सुन सकने के लिए हम डॉक्यूमेंट किया, किस्म किस्म को नाम को जमा किया, मच्छीबारी जमा किया, आपका इंटरव्यू लेकर ध्यान से लेकर उसको सुना और सुनकर उसको अच्छे से लिखकर उस रिकॉर्डिंग को जमा करने के लिए काम कर रहा है। मेरा पढ़ाई करने वाला जगह बेंगलोर में है। ये है अरुणाचल। यहाँ से मेरा पढ़ने जगह है बेंगलोर है, इसका नाम है NCBS। बेंगलोर में हम रिसर्च करता है, वहीं में एक आर्काइव्स है। आर्काइव्स यानी एक ऐसा जगह है जहाँ में रिकॉर्डिंग और कागज वगैरह जमा करता है, उसको सालों साल देख सकने के लिए, पढ़ सकने के लिए, सुन सकने के लिए वहाँ में जमा करता है। पुराना लोगों का कहानी, कागज, फोटो, वीडियो, जो भी ऐसा चीज़ जिसको गायब नहीं होने देना है उसको आर्काइव में डालता है। नेट में आर्काइव्स की ये वेबसाइट है। ये वेबसाइट को हम आप सबका फ़ोन में भेज देगा। उसमें एक तो बटन दबाने से आप पूरा बुरा लोग का आवाज़ में कहानी सुनने सकेगा। सब आदमी इसको सुनने सकेगा अगर एक बार नेट में डालेगा। रिसर्च वाला, लैंग्वेज वाला, गवर्नमेंट वाला भी, और सभी हम आप पूरे लोग, सब बच्चा लोग भी बड़ा बुरा लोग का कहानी नेट में एक तो बटन दबाने से सुनने सकेगा। इसको अच्छा से जमा करने के लिए और सब लोग को ये बताने के लिए कि पूरे लोग का क्या कहानी है, क्या नॉलेज है, क्या लैंग्वेज है, आपका बोलने से इसको यहाँ में जमा करेगा। आने वाला 20-30 ईयर या जनरेशन में जमा करने के लिए उसका रिस्क आर्काइव्स को देगा।
आपसे पूछा है यहाँ पे आपका दिया वाला नॉलेज को जमा कर देगा क्या?
एक तो कॉपी सब रिकॉर्डिंग आपका पास में यहाँ में देना मेमोरी में, एक तो मेरा पास में यहाँ पे जाके आप हाँ बोलने से एक तो कॉपी आर्काइव्स में रखेगा। ये मैंने सुने हुए बहुत सारे लोग बात में याद करने लगेगा और जनरेशन लगेगा। आप अपना रिकॉर्डिंग को पूरा को सुनो और आपको बताओ।
This video made conversation starters much easier. People would have generally very pointed feedback for me. Most people expressed delight and enthusiasm at creating such a repository. There is a lot of pride in their knowledge, and people want their language and their oral history to be known more widely. They consider it important for social recognition. The archive was generally a well-received idea, but several consultants had feedback for us, and one person was not impressed and denied their consent for archiving. In the feedback, for example, Ashok Kaswang and Padwi Kaswang thought it was best aided with a YouTube channel for wider engagement of Puroik youth, which is an excellent idea, and I will still do it in addition to this archive. This archive offers a reliable, stable repository where the oral literature can be safely stored for many decades. It allows us to determine levels of access and catalog the collection in a systematic way so that in the future, the Puroik youth, scholars, and the wider public can access them. Many consultants clearly outlined which parts of the information should primarily be part of the repository or a YouTube channel in the future. It included Puroik names for different parts of the palm, names and identification characters of the varieties of the palm, oral history narration, sago processing method, and how life was in the past for the Puroik people. Some people expressed concern regarding the use of another tribe's language in some of the recordings. These concerns arose because intertribal relations and tensions have been part of the wider social political context of Arunachal Pradesh. The Puroik are a marginalized group who have had to endure subjugation from other tribes in the past. These concerns arise because of existing power structures and the influence they may have. We had many discussions regarding this, and to address some of these concerns, I also consulted the All Puroik Welfare Society Board, a representative body of the Puroik people. The society showed their support for this documentation, for creating the archive, after an initial discussion about what will be the benefits of this repository for the Puroik people. One of the members of the society even contributed their knowledge of the oral history, a genealogy of the Puroik people, to the archive. I also met with Dr. Tadurini, a researcher and oral historian who introduced me to other scholars at the Arunachal Institute for Tribal Studies at Rajiv Gandhi University, who were able to share from their experience recommended actions given the social political context and advised me to err on the side of caution regarding certain sensitive matters. I derived from the discussions that the best way would be to utilize multiple levels of access to determine who the information was available to. And so this field visit was also to ground myself in the social and political context of the Puroik people, but also more broadly of Arunachal, and to understand what could be the consequences, the risks and benefits of public access to this knowledge, specifically in this context. It was around this time I started learning deeply about the ethics of archiving. Thanks to the archives team and the multiple people I met in that month, I was learning that consent is not equal to a one-time yes. In our case, I felt that consent meant trust, transparency, showing up and following up. It is an ongoing negotiation to understand the comfort, eagerness and satisfaction of our contributors to have their data in this oral archive, for them to know that they will be consulted and that their concerns will be prioritized. To visualize some of the dilemmas in the process of archiving, I'd ask you to imagine a rope, both ends of which are pulling at each other and there is a tension in the middle. At the middle, this tension exists between storytelling and safeguarding, that is between increasing access to data and at the same time limiting access, determining which data is shared on a public platform and which is held back. This tension exists between preserving the context and at the same time protecting the people's interest in the long term. Recent discourse in data and archival practices invokes feminist ethics of care for indigenous data governance. Let's take a closer look at FAIR and CARE principles which operate in a similar tension. FAIR principles are about making data open and shareable so that globally people can interpret, use and manage the data created. CARE principles bring in an ethics associated with indigenous data management, including indigenous people's right to self-determination, shared benefit arising from the data generated, and a say over the use of their data. These principles are complementary to each other and must be exercised in tandem. Researchers and archivists, among others, are expected to be fair and care. With these learnings and thoughts, I return back to the archives. Back at the archives, the work is long and intensive. For the people who consented to archiving the recordings, I prepared speaker biographies, listened to the recordings again, translated and summarized them. This was a two-step translation from Puroik to Hindi and Hindi to English. While on field, we recorded translations from Puroik to Hindi, sometimes during the interview on the spot, and sometimes in a separate translation file where we were playing the original sentence by sentence. I would make careful notes on field, which I referred to back in the archives when I was translating from Hindi to English. Once summarized, these were then run through a sensitivity analysis. A sensitivity analysis is a framework developed in-house at the archives at NCBS by Samyani Srivatsa. It allows you to log any potential sensitive portion of an interview and then list the reasons for why it would be sensitive. Assess those reasons to determine an appropriate action for that portion of the interview, and in this way, one is able to log the reason for the decision, allowing them to also discuss with collaborators and review after a set period of time. For example, does it contain third-party information? Is there personal information? In a discussion with both my research advisors and mentor at the archives, we were able to bring multiple perspectives to the table and make these decisions on these issues. Broadly for us, there were recurring themes of sensitive information. One of the major ones, like I said before, was intertribal relationships. Puroik and Nishi tribes have been close neighbors for centuries before the present, and their interactions have spanned friendship, camaraderie, antagonism, and even serfdom. The Puroik have had to endure enslavement in the past from Nishi and other dominant tribes. This history, however, is varied and incomplete. There isn't one single narrative. This forms the social political backdrop of the recordings. The Puroik are already a marginalized group. The stakes are very high, as misrepresenting history can create consequences for the Puroik people who are already marginalized. Inter-tribe situations remain very volatile in Arunachal Pradesh. Any information publicly accessible in the archive, if subject to misuse or misrepresentation, can endanger instead of empowering the Puroik people. This increases the sensitivity of the topic. And so, if people have shared personal details or accounts related to this, the information has been redacted. Any strong political comments have been redacted. In these recordings, only one-sided perspective is available. The other perspective, along with much wider studies geographically, are needed to understand the past relationships. Being a non-indigenous person and an archive housing indigenous data, it is necessary to err on the side of caution and practice an ethics of care of avoiding any misrepresentation. This gives you a picture of the sensitivity review. There are 4 levels of access at the archives at NCBS: publicly available, available on request, available in person at the archives, and restricted. These levels of access are assigned following the review form, in consultation with advisors and team members. Once reviewed thoroughly, the access copies of the recordings are made and prepared for upload. The work is repetitive and tends to get mundane until a glimmer of curiosity shines through and sparks my interest right back in. It takes me back in time. It takes me to that time when we were making these recordings, captures the ambience, and I'm physically transported. For those who may understand Hindi or Puroik here, these excerpts will illustrate what I mean. सर ये आवाज़ नहीं दे रहा, वापस रखोगे, चेक करेंगे।
इस पे
शुआ भी नहीं, सारा बत्ती
अरे रे
हम आजकल सोचा बहुत इंटरेस्ट था दूर चाचा लोग कहानी बने दूर शुआ भी नहीं, सारा बत्ती
ये निकाल दो।
उनका आपस में कहानी करना होता है ना, उन जल्दी से लेखा उसमें आप से ध्यान से उसमें भी कौन से वाला है उसको पॉइंट को फिर
स्टॉप करो। वॉल्यूम फुल है सर। क्या चीज़ को जूम का
उसका कंप्यूटर का वॉल्यूम रहता है
ये है सर कंप्यूटर का इधर तो नहीं आता है। मेरा सेटिंग ऑन कर दो और जो
आजकल सोचा बहुत इंटरेस्ट था दूर चाचा लोग कहानी दूर आते शुआ भी नहीं, सारा बत्ती उनका आपस में कहानी करना होता है ना, उन जल्दी से देखा उसमें ना से ध्यान से उसको उसमें में कौन से वाला है उसका पॉइंट को फिर ध्यान में आता है
ना तो कहानी मनन या हो जाए ना लोग
na lo hi kami ro na ta mi bon na mami ga ja la ta gre na ni kami ya da na jera ya पूरा सोचने का भी बोलने का भी जानने का भी यहाँ दिल में पूरा लिख के रखा है कागज जैसे kerja masih karang, nak kerja megau rata nak.
Bo amo janda kami do roi de do na roi do roi na ba bu ja roi do roi ta na roi ni na roi do ni ko na adu do roi ka de la ko lo ni hu roi ta la ka ha ni la ta na ha ta yang ye do a ta yang ye ko pa na ta tong man ta ni ada orang dulu, teman jamu macam ni saya cengar dulu. Macam perempuan, kamu kata macam kemarin nampak.
आजकल का आदमी जो सुन के भी नहीं सुनने जैसे बोलने से भी नहीं बोलने जैसे पहले का जमाने में पूरा दीदी आप सुन के रखने से डायरेक्ट पूरा याद करके रखता है आदमी का सुनने पूरा बोलने वाला को पूरा याद करके रखता है आजकल का ऐसे नहीं है ऐसे तो याद करके आया है दीदी ऐसे दीदी वो लोग का सोचने वाला से अभी ऐसे भी सोचने वाला नहीं होगा
For me, this is the essence of an oral archive. Traditionally, this knowledge would be passed on to the next generation next to a fireplace, where elders would contest each other's narration of the oral history, and young children will learn while listening to them. So the hope with this oral archive is also that when the younger Puroik hear their elders speak, it will be in the voice and words of their elders, that they can learn the oral history from them directly if they wish to. It is more relevant now, as at the present, the common model of schooling in Arunachal Pradesh is boarding schools for young children. Children are being removed from the household setting where they would otherwise receive this knowledge and learn it over their lifetimes. An oral archive also offers more access to someone understanding Puroik or Arunachali Hindi, who can infer the meaning firsthand and not need to rely on my translation, on any translation. The translations may already be capturing less than the original, and these are subject to corrections by Puroik scholars in the future. So now we'll have a collection with over 40 speakers, audio and a few videos as well. So have we done it? Have we managed to save the endangered Puroik language? An archive will likely not revitalize a language. This is a repository of Puroik oral literature, which for all we know, could be collecting cyber dust 10 years down the line, which is not a nice thought, which I don't like to entertain. But as any normal person who's ridden with anxiety or concern, I googled how can you save an endangered language, and it's true. I mean, documentation is the first step, in-depth, thorough documentation. But there's more to saving a language. It involves the life of a language, and language lives through its speakers, through people who will crack jokes in the language, use metaphors, and keep it going. And so while it's a crucial first step, there's still a long way to go. But having this archive means that there is a stable repository, which will be there hopefully for several decades and even longer, that can also serve as a platform to engage people. What if in the future, we could take it to schools? What if we could organize for a group of Puroik students to visit the archives at NCBS, engage with other material as well, share their opinion on this one, offer corrections, take up projects, and take it from there? In what ways can this repository translate to fulfilling the aspirations of the contributors? The YouTube channel recommended by our consultants is soon to follow. It will include curated films as requested by the people and perhaps can continue to serve as a platform for community engagement by the community elders. Our consultants have also expressed a desire for a picture book or a storybook. And in what ways can we help build capacity for the Puroik youth in bringing in opportunities like these? What can we do when we are thinking of modes of engagement like this? This also makes us think, what is the responsibility of an archive beyond housing a collection, in the afterlife of an archival object, and towards the people who have contributed? To answer the question I posed in the beginning, what have I learned about the archive through the archiving? I will summarize it as follows. First, that archives are not just about preserving the past because of a loss in the present and to fulfill a need in the future. It's equally about which stories are told, who has the power to determine the narrative, and who the repository will serve. These are intangible components of the archive. Second, archives are sites of power, where historical context is continuously invoked to create meaning in the present. Third, that people are at the center of archives, not the archival object, and which voices are represented is best done, in my case, in consultation with who the story belongs to and incorporating principles of care. Fourth, that an ethics of care is a choice and manifests in two forms. One is an internal compass and desire to be ethical, and two, an institutional framework or mandate that makes it much easier to achieve it. Even if you have the inner desire to be ethical, it provides you a systematic means of doing so. And so what we want is surely individuals who prioritize ethics, but also institutional systems that enable them to achieve it. In this case, it was the sensitivity review form. As I share these learnings, I must also add that these are not definitive answers. These are my reflections, and this project is still an experiment. It's not like the roadmap is clear and immaculate. We don't know where we are leading it, but we are making our best effort to derive from these principles a sensibility of creating an oral archive that reflects the aspirations of the knowledge holders. Could I then comment on what an archive should be or could be? Let me break down my thoughts. An archive, as I understand, is a place where material of historical importance is placed. But that importance is assigned by people, and more than a storehouse of sorts, it's a relational space that holds not just the material, but also a lot of responsibility. Again, this is not a definition set in stone, it's something evolving. It is created by the people who interact with the archives and who manage the archives. And I will leave this unanswered, intentionally and admittedly, not trying to define the archive, but opening it back to you. What is the archive? I will close with these thoughts and only add to say that the knowledge that is recorded and deposited in this oral history collection belongs to the Puroik people of East Kamen. It is through their love and trust that this archive has taken any form. It is truly humbling to learn from generations of wealth of knowledge that they carry forward. People of Surung Kaswang, Byale, Machidu, Macha, and Byaluam villages, this knowledge is theirs, and I am forever indebted to them for sharing it with me and giving me and us a chance to experience their extraordinary lives and listen to their oral history. I am grateful to all the contributors for their critical feedback for this project. I want to thank several people who were as much a part of this project as me, my research supervisors Chintan Cheet and Anindya Sinha, for their guidance and support throughout. Thank you to Puroik Kaswang, who made any of this work possible by being my advisor on field and helping to connect with all elders and friends in many villages. Thank you to my mentors at the archives, Deepika S. and Venkat Srinivasan, together with the amazing archives team who nourished this project with continued discussions and very important feedback. Thank you to Samyami Srivatsa for her work on the sensitivity framework for oral histories. Thank you to Mania Machidu, Ashok Kaswang and Abhiyu Kaswang for helping to meet all other people and communicate the message. I'm thankful to Dr. Tadurani and the Arunachal Institute of Tribal Studies at Rajiv Gandhi University for advice and comments. Thank you to the All Puroik Welfare Society Board, including Kashok Haller, and to the district administration of East Kamen. This work was originally done as part of the Master's Program in Wildlife Biology and Conservation at NCBS before it entered the archives at NCBS. Thank you to Sidhu sir for helping with all the arrangements today. Thank you all very much, and I'm very happy to take questions. Thank you also for your patience, and I'm very grateful for your interest.
Mansi. Questions, comments, reflections?
Hi Mansi. Every time I listen to this talk, I learn something. So, thank you for sharing your work.
Like in breaks.
Sorry. It's maybe my ability to use it. Okay. I just had a question, listening to your talk this time around, like perhaps I've learned twice before, so I wanted to start the discussion maybe with that. So I understand that there was one set of interviews that was done during the master's program, and another set of interviews that was done during your time, the second round of fieldwork, when you were also asking for consent for this to enter the archive. And I wonder if you notice a difference in these set of recordings once the people that you were interviewing knew that this would enter the archive. Do you notice these interviews being different in what they share, perhaps the tone of what with which they're sharing, and whether this knowledge of being archived changed the way that they shared with you in the second time, and when you listen to kind of both side by side as you might have done while archiving them, did you kind of sense that, and why might that be, if that is?
That's a very interesting question, Sanjana. Thank you. You're making me think back, and I don't think I saw a lot of difference in the two. Although it was a conscious effort on the part of the people who were sharing that they speak as much as possible in Puroik language only. And I think it's also because they share with the intention to want to have it, more publicly accessible, that I did not see that much of a difference. Yeah. Also, I think I would add to say that earlier, when I did interviews, it was like focused on the people-plant relationship. Also, I would ask, about the oral history. This time around, it was mostly focused on the oral history. Yeah. Not that they're separate in any way, but yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Mansi. You have a very good insight. For a person like me, coming from a literature background, I'm much interested to know how these people consume this product that is from the farm. What way they make, like we people are used to making. As I understand from your talk, it is mostly carbohydrate source.
Correct.
So they make a gruel, or they make a dosa or idli or something like that.
I would say it's
that
actually.
was just coming in my mind. I just wanted.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Dr. Jagdish, for the question. I would say it's very close to ragi mudde.
Oh, right.
The reason is because once sago is extracted from the palm, the trunk, it's powdery, and then it's first mixed in cold water to make it like a slurry, and then hot boiling water is added to it so that it gets cooked. Then it becomes I showed the video in the beginning where I was eating, that's the sago, so that's how they generally cook it.
It can't be preserved for long, is it? It must be harvested and consumed.
Generally, it lasts for about 2 weeks to a month, depending on the weather and consumption. But long-term storage is not even necessary, because it's like a seasonal harvest. Whenever a household may run out of it, they will go back to their grove and harvest another.
Now, apart from this, what else constitute their major diet?
Mm-hmm. So, accompaniment of this is fermented bamboo shoot. It's called maroon. in Puroik language, and it's a pungent taste in the beginning, but then eventually you like develop a liking for it. So they say that it's the best accompaniment, and it's like best suited to be eaten together. But apart from that, there's also a lot of forage vegetables that are part of the diet. They also do jhum cultivation, which means vegetables like pumpkin, maize, different varieties of millets, varieties of rice are also grown. So the diet is very diverse.
But what is the source of protein for them? Because it's mostly carbohydrate, what do you?
They raise livestock, and the source is meat. Also insects.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's very interesting. Very nice, thank you.
A couple of questions online and then I'll come to you. There's a question from Razada online, which is, I'm just reading it out. I quote, I was wondering if you came across stories of environmental change of local wildlife for the palm tree species that was the inspiration for your study during the course of your work. So broadly looking at environmental change as part of the conversation.
Thank you, Gazala, for the question. I will take a moment to think about this. I think in terms of environmental change, one of the things I heard was that earlier jhum cultivation was less common, and it's now being done more than before. In terms of the palm, one definite thing that we saw during the research was that the memory of the varieties is being lost, and there could potentially be a large number of varieties being cultivated in the present, and it's just that we've been able to document what has been retained collectively. So I think these two things stayed with me in terms of change in the environment.
Good evening, everyone.
Thank you.
I give a brief introduction about myself. I'm Dr. Neelu Nagapatri. I'm a retired professor and university head of the discipline of sericulture from GKVK UAS Bangalore. Well, my remarks about Mansi's talk now. I think she's given a fairly good presentation. I just wish with all the literature you have gathered, you focus on carry forward of your research. Do your PhD on the same, extended topic. It's better if you work from Bangalore than go to any other state. If need be, there are people around within Karnataka and within Bangalore who could be on your advisory committee. And that way you get guidance from everyone. And you can further, with the kind of information you have collected, with all the literature you have, you can really be the world authority on this, if you really wish to. You have to aim, you have to strive for that. So you should frame your PhD, work on carry forward of what you've done, your master's degree. I wish you good luck, I wish you success. I think you can achieve it. Where there is a will, there's a way. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Neelu. I'm also so grateful to you for coming here today. I know that it's taken a lot of effort, and it resonates what you just said. There is a will, there is a way. Thank you for the advice also. I will definitely keep it in mind and keep thinking about it. Thank you.
It's on the back.
Yes, hello. Thank you so much for a wonderful presentation. I would also like to second what Dr. just said. Keep at it. You're doing well with your okay, cool. I think I might have the same problem using mics. But yes, my question pertains to whether you came across any interesting medicinal plants that are endemic to that particular locality. And if, so plants that perhaps aren't widely heard of, but is perhaps locked within the language, so to speak. And if there's any interesting information that you found in that.
Yeah, thanks for the question. There are many medicinal plants that the Puroik people use. When I fell ill, I was staying with, her name is Mother Kaswan, she's an elderly lady, and she had this one herb which you were supposed to chop off a little bit, chip a little bit, put hot water and then drink. Whether you have fever or stomach upset, it cures that. I should have recorded more accurately all the names of the medicinal plants, but since that was not the focus, I did not do that. It might still appear in the oral history collection, and so I'd urge you to visit the archives at NCBS and listen to that.
Nicely done. I think there's a question.
Thank you for the wonderful talk. I'm just curious, what languages the kids speak now, and do they speak Puroik, or are they taught like Puroik, this language in their schools, or and are there any efforts from the local people or any local organization or anyone from the state to preserve this language is one. And also at the community level, are there any storytelling performances happen in that language? Because that kind of preserves the language in a way. I don't know, like I'm from the coastal Karnataka, so I think Tudu language will thrive even if the world ends, because Yakshagana is very, very famous and thriving. Yeah. So I'm just curious, about this storytelling and the school.
Yeah. Thank you for the question. So this would be probably varying from place to place, but many young children who are going to schools are forgetting the Puroik language. If you're old enough and continue to speak to your parents in Puroik, I think you'll retain. If that's what it's.
Do they speak that language in school?
No, not in the schools. Schools teach Hindi and English, and in general in the area, Nishi language, where I went, Nishi language is more dominant. So most people speak Nishi language. It might also be used in schools sometimes, and so these three languages then become more prominent than Puroik itself. About the storytelling performance, I don't know of it, but you see the setting of both these examples is quite different. For example, Yakshagana is performative, right? And
you mentioned about some contest they do.
I mean, it's like, so what I'm describing is that in the house, there is a fireplace in the middle of every house. And then elders would sit there and then, start reciting. Maybe one would start reciting, but then the other one would say, oh no, this is not right, this is right. And so in this setting, they would contest the oral history. This is how, if kids are around, they will learn. So this is what I was describing. So I guess, I don't know if you call this performative, but it is.
It is,
right?
yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Do they do it on a regular basis?
I don't think it's so planned.
Alright.
But it's part of sharing the knowledge. It's recited.
Right.
Yeah, it's passed on. Yeah, Can you describe how Yakshagana is organized? Maybe I can draw some comparison.
No, there are one is the very simplest form of Yakshagana is basically storytelling, and two people sit, or minimum two people sit and they tell the story, maybe from Puranas, and they add contemporary element to it. And if something happened in their neighborhood, they link it to Purana and they perform it. And it happens. So it's an offering to a Devi too, in a way. And also it happens during the season in almost, there is called Mane Mane Bhagavati, and people, the performers go to the houses and they perform. So even they don't even need audience. Like if there is one person watching, then it's enough for them.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm not talking about the big performances, but this chotu thing they do. So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, it's nice to know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say that.
But it's very vibrant. Like even for that, like they do a lot of makeup and dance.
Yeah, I've had the chance to see it.
Great, yeah.
It's very engaging, definitely. And I've also had the chance to experience, for example, the narration of oral history in Arunachal. And elders would stay on for nights.
Right.
They would debate and contest among each other. And because children are around, they will absorb it. And that's what one of the audios that I played was not so clear. Elder Abhu Kaswam, he's telling how he learned. He was seeking truth, and he learned it because he said chacha log, which means his uncles and like elders would like sit around the fireplace. They would contest, and he would not sleep with them for 2 nights, 2 days. He would just listen, and he would keep learning. So I think that's how I would answer your question. I hope that does answer.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Mansi, really good talk, and it's really good to see you at the end of all your fieldwork for your masters and everything, and showing me the way out. So my question was from your experience. So what is the role of the church and potentially the fact that their religion is now a syncretic one with Christianity, their traditional faith is, and how could we sort of think about the church and the syncretic religion, and the fact that they, of course, they meet regularly in the church, and the future or the state of their oral history in that space.
Thank you, Chintan. It's a very interesting thing to think about. The church is definitely a place where people gather, and it happens multiple times a week. And so perhaps that can serve as a platform for reciting the oral history again on as many occasions as possible, and imparting this knowledge to the younger generation. Thank you.
Yeah, hi, Mansi.
Hi, Shweta.
It was lovely the way you connected your masters to moving into archiving. It was really, really very interesting. And going all the way to Arunachal, which is not easy. I wanted to ask you a little bit, an extension to what Chintan was mentioning. I wasn't very sure about what kind of religious practices these people have. And he was mentioning Christianity. But they also, since these are tribal people, they have other local gods and goddesses that they worship. And are a lot of those practices also through their local language. So that way, I do not know their religious practices. If that continues, probably the language will also continue. So is there something that happens in that fashion?
Thanks, Shweta. The Puroik people have animistic faith, and it's only in the past 15 or so years, maybe 20, maybe a little longer, that Christianity has come in. And so currently, like Chintan was saying, it's a syncretic faith between animism and Christianity. And by animism, I mean that elements of nature around them have personhood, and they are an important part of their belief system. Rivers, mountains, as well as other inhabitants of the world. So humans are not the only inhabitants, and humans continuously cross paths with other creatures. And so I would describe that syncretic faith to be somewhere in between Christianity, where people worship Jesus, and the animistic faith. So in animism, it is through a shaman, a practicing shaman, that people would be able to communicate with the spirit world. And as Christianity is coming, there are not so many shamans anymore. So there is that dynamic of shift. Whether we need to consider reviving the older faith is not something I think is up to me to think about. It's up to the people. Up to religion is a choice, right? So what prospects it holds for preserving the language? It's really something that will evolve from the people's aspirations, and I think that's how I will close this answer of mine. I hope I answered your question.
I'll just pick one question from online and then come to you, John. The question's from Akhil, and I quote, this question is more oriented towards the institution, but I will squarely bring it back to you. And the question is, can something be done to bring the archives to the broader audience by leveraging better distribution channels online for the larger audience? And do you see benefit in doing so? I know you addressed this briefly, but if you could talk to it, and if I can add to it, whom do you think the archive is for over a period of time, and how do you see this playing out? Maybe.
Thank you. So the first part of the question is, how can it serve as a platform for wider engagement?
Can something be done to bring the archives to a broader audience? I mean, so what distribution channels do you see?
Okay.
And again, you'll have to probably define audience, and do you see any benefit in doing so? This is the question.
Okay. Yes, I think the archives belong to the larger public, especially because the archives at NCBS is a public collecting center. And I think the archives is doing a great job of facilitating public access. Nisha, you have something to say? Okay, all right. And I think, for example, in the talk when I talk about the YouTube channel, when I talk about how is it possible to take it into the mainstream, perhaps, to bring it closer to the people. Who does the archive belong to is a question I've been thinking about. It belongs to definitely the people who have contributed, belongs to the users of the archive, belongs to... well, what do you think, Venkat? I think I'll ask you.
Happily deflect that. Take on the next question from John, because we're also out of time.
Thank you very much. It was a wonderful presentation. I was reflecting on this paper from about 50 years ago by Lynn White, which speaks about the historic roots of our ecological crisis. And at that point in time, the notion of the replacement of animism by monotheism came in a big way. But it seems that this is interesting because over there you had, say, dryads or nymphs or like being replaced by Catholic saints, for example. Like, I'm curious, is this some kind of riposte in some sense where you can have syncretism, where you can have faith in Christ, for example, but you can also continue to have an animist world whereby you don't really need saints? I'm curious.
Very interesting thought. Thank you for that. I think, yeah, it opens possibilities. But I really wonder about the nature of how these things happen. And I can only look at it from the theoretical perspective. But what is it to experience it? And what comes from the experience of a faith that people have carried, and a faith that they're taking to now, and what is that experience like? It's very interesting. Thank you. Yeah.
All right. We are out of time for questions, but we can continue this over tea and refreshments outside. But in a moment, please do give me just join me in thanking Mansi for the topic.